Welcome back for another video. What are the best FPL managers doing this week? If you're new around here, this series breaks down data from hundreds of elite FPL managers. Between them, they've won FPL before, finished top 100 4 times, top 1k 44 times, and 367 finishes in the top 10k. So you won't find more valuable data anywhere. Hit subscribe so you don't miss out on this every game week. It's completely free. You can always change your mind as well. So let's kick off with the manager highlight, and the top ranked expert is Marcel, who sits at 3.3k currently, after a pretty low scoring game week for him, just 53 points. He's only made 12 transfers all season though, 21 game weeks next. He's sitting on 5 rolled transfers, so that's some position to be in at that rank. Well done if you managed to beat the average expert score, which was 63 points. So let's have a look at the transfer activity then. For Game Week 21, 60% are planning to roll, 29% making 1 transfer, 6% making 2 transfers, and 4% making 3. One manager's making 4, and there's 3 -4 hits this week. So it's Game Week 21 next, so Game Week 25 is not that far away now, where Liverpool and Everton have got a good chance of doubling, even Spurs and Fulham could. We'll talk more about the upcoming blanks and doubles in a segment next. Now, one reason that we should be thinking about rolling when possible is because, of course, we can roll up to 5 free transfers now, so we're in new territory where rolling now affects you 4 game weeks down the line, and that could be crucial to attack the double game weeks. Whereas had it been any past season, rolling the week before gets you up to the maximum number of free transfers. So perhaps we'll see slightly more rolled transfers in the coming weeks. Which players are they buying and selling then? The most bought player by the experts is Gordon for Game Week 21. 12% are picking the Newcastle winger up, closely followed by Bruno, who 10% are buying. 2 outstanding fixtures for these two. Newcastle playing home to Wolves, who already had serious issues at the back with more goals conceded than anyone. But further to that, Semedo, Totti and Dawson all out, and Mosquera out long term as well. Isak's ownership also shooting up and up every week. In fact, last game week in the top 100k, his effective ownership was over 90%. So in a nutshell, you gain basically no rank from his points unless he's your captain. So Gordon's the perfect way to say, look, I want to gain rank from that Newcastle attack who are on fire right now and they've got great fixtures. Gordon was about 30% effective ownership last game week. Just one manager's looking to buy Murphy, who's a much cheaper route into the Newcastle attack. However, he is pretty unreliable for minutes, so perhaps that's why. Despite the Liverpool fixture, 6% are buying Wood. That's surprisingly high. That said, Evan Nilsson's just undergone an operation on his foot and he's out for a while. 5% are selling him, and 5% are selling Jackson as well. He still has a couple of solid fixtures, but recent form's been so poor with 1 goal and 6 starts. 6% are turning to Mateta instead, who hasn't been nearly as consistent as Wood this season, with 5 goals to Wood's 12. Though he's got the superior fixtures in a nutshell, and he did score last game week, so this could be a turning point in his form. So Calvert-Lewin and Broja are currently flagged. 2% are buying in Dye. He's a very left field pick. He's in less than 1% of teams overall. That said, Everton have just sacked Dyche and have welcomed Moyes back to the club. We're going to see more goals from Everton, and very likely less clean sheets. And given they've got a postponement to be rearranged, he's not a bad pick as a third cheap forward, and you can bench him when needed for 5.4 mil. So Luis Diaz is the most sold player. Now he's such an explosive pick, but the underlying issue there is the minutes obviously. For example, he was off at 59 minutes last match for a 1-pointer. He's not a bad hold if you're willing to accept the frustration of the occasional benchings or early subs, but Gordon and Bruno do look like upgrades this week if you've not got them. Okay, so let's have a brief chat about the blanks and doubles then, since we've had the first leg of the League Cup and the FA Cup still ongoing. So first of all, Everton versus Liverpool was postponed in Game Week 15 due to the weather, so there has to be rearranged for another game week, which will cause a double game week. It's likely to be Game Week 25. The previous touted Game Week 24 doesn't seem as likely now, because Liverpool play on the 6th of February in the League Cup, which is midweek after Game Week 24. So if it goes into Game Week 25, that would be a double of Palace and Liverpool for Everton, and a double of Wolves and Everton for Liverpool. The League Cup final clashes with Game Week 29. The 4 teams, of course, still in it are Newcastle, Arsenal, Liverpool and Crystal Palace. They've just played the first leg. Whoever reaches the final won't play in Game Week 29, and of course their opponent won't either for that game week. Based on the odds to reach the final, Newcastle, Palace, Villa and Liverpool are the likeliest to blank with a 49% chance. 36% chance that Fulham and Spurs blank instead of Villa and Liverpool. Newcastle and Palace are in the top 2 likeliest scenarios, given that Newcastle are 2-0 up against Arsenal from the first leg, so they're very likely to blank. Now, whoever ends up blanking in Game Week 29 will almost certainly have their postponement moved to Game Week 33, which will cause a double game week for those 2 teams, plus the 2 opponents they'll have then, so 4 teams to double. Much later in the season, the FA Cup semi-finals clash for Gameweek 34, which will cause a blank there, and those games will almost certainly move to Gameweek 36, causing a double Gameweek there, for 6 or 8 teams most likely. We don't need to worry about these much later Gameweeks right now, to be honest with you. However, make sure you are subscribed, because it'll be covered in videos here and strategies to maximise your points. Just bringing it back to Gameweek 25 again then. Spurs are in a tricky scenario for the schedulers. They're still in the League Cup, Europa League and FA Cup. Now, if they were to hypothetically make the Europa League final, the League Cup final, and go deep in the FA Cup, then there wouldn't be enough available slots to rearrange those games that have been postponed. It's unlikely that they go on such deep runs on all fronts, but the schedulers tend not to take any chances, so they might be proactive and reschedule their Gameweek 29 fixture against Fulham in Gameweek 25 on the assumption that they reach the League Cup final. They're 1-0 up from the first leg against Liverpool, so what they might do is preemptively announce it. So they might say if they reach the final, then they're going to double in Gameweek 25, so it's something to keep an eye on. And going back to that earlier point in the video, rolled transfers could be very valuable near Gameweek 25 if it were to happen. Now of course, Liverpool are still favourites to knock them out despite trailing by 1 goal. I realise quite a lot to absorb there, so rewind and rewatch if you need to. And as I say, we'll talk more about these game weeks as they get nearer and when announcements drop. So moving on to Gameweek 21 Captaincy, and it's very split this week. Salah is top, but just 40% of the experts going with him, and then 35% are backing Isak, 19% Palmer, 4% Bruno and 2% Haaland. So there's clearly a feeling among the top managers that there is an opportunity here to bet against Salah to try and scoop up more rank upside, but obviously as always it is risky. Liverpool are away to Forest, who've been such an organised defence. It wouldn't be surprising if Liverpool can only score 1 or 2 at most. Now Newcastle are home to Wolves, that seems to have more goals in it. Likewise Chelsea home to Bournemouth, Man United home to Southampton and City away to Brentford. What do FPL review projections look like then? Well, Salah's only in 4th place on the projections. It's Palmer and Bruno joint top and 7.2 points, Haaland 6.7, Salah 6.5 and then Isak 6.1. Let us know in the comments who are you captaining this week. Moving on to the Experts Team for Gameweek 21, and it's a 3-5-2 this week with Rari in goal as always. It's Trent, Gabriel and Hall at the back, Palmer, Gordon, Salah, Sarr and Rodgers in midfield, Isak and João Pedro up front. Now João Pedro is yellow flagged. He did tweet yesterday that he's had a scan on his ankle and it's okay, so it seems promising, but who knows. And on the bench it's Fabianski, Robinson, Wood and Greaves, so there's good depth if needed. Now Bruno's only 9% owned overall, so still a differential. He's 27% owned among the experts next Gameweek though. Not quite enough to get in the team ahead of Sarr though. Salah and Palmer remain at 100% ownership in the Experts League, Isak 95%, and Trent has shot up in recent weeks to 74%. There's plenty of money in the bank with this week's Experts team, so you could easily have Munoz over Greaves for example, but it is the template team only using the most owned 15 players. Let's finish up with final thoughts and tips from the experts for Gameweek 21. Alex, Medium Boy, says, Diaz to Gordon is my likely transfer, but I might change if a Trent benching is likely. I'm very tempted to captain Bruno Fernandes against the dog shit Southampton. I should have read this first. But I might end up taking the safe Salah/Palmer route closer to the deadline. FPL Sis says, this feels like a good week to consolidate and not knee-jerk. Providing cup games are uneventful for injuries, there will be mass rolling. Save those free transfers for the chip season. Stephen Hinchy says, it's time to go against Salah captain. And lastly, FPL Carefree says, I'm playing catch up a little bit, and I think this is a good opportunity to bet against Salah captain. Away at Forest is a really tricky game. Isak currently getting the nod for me. Thanks very much for watching. Hit subscribe so you don't miss out on these once a week for the rest of the season. See you soon for the next one.